All right. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Wherever you might be, you're listening to CRPN Central right now. Welcome to CRPN Central, the podcast that brings together literally some of the coolest minds in this industry so we can talk about our challenges, explore them, and find solutions to get something done. Coming onto the stage are two very special co-hosts, Mitch Hilby, Lauren Stockwell. What a day. What did you think about the Pediatric Patients podcast?
I am happy to jump in here. It was awesome. It was so cool to hear the advocacy in both of these individuals. It was so cool to hear the personal connection and the personal stories. I think, the pediatric population is literally the future generation. And I think it is so special when you have people that are connected to building that out and creating a better future for medicine and future for our people and future for everybody. And, not just thinking about our children, but our children's children. And when you have people who are such wonderful champions for that, it's doomed to be wonderful, which is a fabulous way to put that.
Doomed to be wonderful. That should be a t-shirt, Lauren.
Sorry.
Too many t-shirts.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she couldn't have nailed that more on the head, to be honest. But it was crazy how much the two aligned. And, realistically, the more I listened to it, and the more it sat with me and resonated on the approach of how we engage, the pediatric population and how we protect them and take care of them. And, we want to build them up and encourage them and be excited about participating in trials and educate them, kind of help champion them through the studies. And that's the same approach I think we should also just take with humans in general. It shouldn't be limited to just pediatric patients, but it's absolutely fantastic and exciting to see some of the stuff that they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, so this is a pediatric patient podcast. So for all of you out there, let's grab our little snugglies. So for everyone,
so I've got
our teddy bears.
I've got two. I did bring P-Bear, who's been around with me forever. He's called P-Bear because we were super imaginative as children. And then special guest here as well is a Purble. Which is, one of the Empath Labs collaborations there.
Mm-hmm. And so for all of you know, this is the Empath Lab Clinical Companion Bear. We have one of these. My daughter is actually helping Aaron with a couple projects here. And so we have this. And speaking of Aaron Horowitz, how are you doing, sir?
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for having me on.
And Brian Burkhardt. Holy moly, we have a superstar crew right now.
What's going on, guys?
Wow. So, Brian, you got your teddy bear with you?
What's that?
You got your teddy bear with you?
He's got stuff you right
now. I don't. I have.
There you go.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't have. I don't have Aaron's teddy bear. But
yeah, I think I'm gonna go on Amazon and buy me a Purble because that looks really cool.
You should.
All I have is a magic wand.
Oh, you have a magic wand? Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
I knew you were a fairy
Come on.
godmother. Right?
Looks crazy cuddly.
So for all of the audience out there, for those of you who do not know Brian Burkhardt and or Aaron Horowitz, would you be willing to introduce yourselves? Let's start with Aaron.
Aaron,
Sure.
go for
Hey,
it.
everybody. Awesome. I'm Aaron Horowitz. I'm the founder and CEO of Empath Labs. I grew up as a child with human growth hormone deficiency. So my body didn't produce what I needed to grow. And I gave myself injections for every day for about 5 years. And that inspired me kind of along my journey to found Empath Labs and create products that help children with illnesses, whether it is type 1 diabetes, where we got our start, or pediatric cancer, sickle cell disease, how to help them cope with, better understand their disease. And more recently, how to help children in clinical research, not only providing them comfort, but to help in some of the hard metrics of things like retention and patient engagement in research studies by giving kids tools that simulate the same medical procedures that they go through. So all of our products, they look soft and cuddly. At their core, they use something called action-oriented medical simulation, which is just a really cool way of simulating all of the different medical procedures that you'll encounter with your companion. So pleased to be here.
And big kudos. So Aaron, I love what Empath is doing. I've had the opportunity to watch some of it. to actually experience some of it, to go through the actual show. It's great. Brian Burkhardt, would you be willing to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Brian Burkhardt. I am the executive director, co-founder, and Oliver's dad of the Oliver Patch Project. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that empowers kids with pediatric cancer. That's our original core of what we do. We make awesome jackets and totes with patches designed by artists for them. All of the programs that we have are based off of support and basically being there as a support system for families going through their journey. We have multiple components of what we do. One, we have a program called the Warrior Garment Program, which is for kids in active treatment. We make jacket and totes for them. All of our programming is free. We have another program that's we send the patches and cards in every month for their year to kids in treatment and their siblings. And then we have the last program, which is celebrated on June 24th, but it's a 365-day initiative called National Patch Day. Mm-hmm. And that's, you can send anyone a patch in the mail for free in the United States. And we send boxes out to hospitals as well. And it's just really encouraged someone, like that small gesture of, a token of like that you're thinking of somebody makes a huge difference. And it's really addressing the bigger issue, which we found, which was really dealing with mental health. Mental health and well-being. So that's our probably our biggest initiative. And most recently, we just launched a global patch support program for clinical trial space, and we're very excited. That is rocking and rolling already. So that's a really cool, similar based off of our program with the pediatric cancer space. We have a set of milestones that basically are following kids along their journey. Same thing with clinical trial. Each visit, they get a different patch and they become part of a global community, not just a specific site or sponsor trial. It's a global community. So that's what we're super excited about. But thank you for having me here. I'm like honored to be with all you guys.
Oh my gosh.
And this is like super exciting for me. So thanks, Sam.
So we recorded this podcast, I think it was last October. It's been a hot minute, but since October, I have seen both of you absolutely skyrocket into fandom. You have fanboys and girls out there admiring what you're doing. Really, really, you're looking at the three of them right here. Is really, really honored to have you on here to talk about some of our smallest and most important patients and participants in clinical research and healthcare, our children, our pediatrics. Yeah. And I have to admit, of all of the podcasts where I did comparators, I have never seen such chemistry between what Brian was talking about on the front lines when he had his experiences with Oliver and how he transformed that into helping as many people as he possibly could. And Aaron with a personal journey as a child who wanted to make things better for generations of children to come, who literally dedicated his entire life to ensuring that our pediatric patients and participants have an amazing experience when they have to go through challenges. Yeah. Oh my gosh, what goosebumps. What a wonderful story. What a wonderful comparator. So I don't know, it's been October. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to each of your podcasts, but I do know for a fact that our hosts did. So if you need any help, let's talk about this. I do want to talk about the comparisons of each of your interviews.
Yeah, so I'll kick it off. One of the things that stuck with me the most, I think, was also when Aaron, kind of how both of these stories tie together, as Aaron mentioned specifically that children are inherently philanthropic. And that shows through Aaron's growth and what you're doing now. But, the same thing with, Oliver's journey and story and working on the Oliver Patch Project. That philanthropic aspect couldn't be more real. It ties directly, I think, with that sense of the courage and the strength that we see with the pediatric patients that are, especially like the oncology pediatric patients.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved that part of it. And I thought it was such a cool comparator as well. The deep connection that you're trying to help kids feel through this industry. I think both of you are doing it in such unique ways. And right, Erin, you're trying to connect these participants to their own journey and to their own, healthcare diagnosis, whatever that looks like, and making it so approachable too. That's what I love about Empath Labs, and something that I've really admired since the very beginning of meeting you and watching you walk around the conference with your little duck. I so distinctly remember, I can see the hall. I just cannot remember what conference it was at. But that being said, like, you're allowing a kid to look at something that could be incredibly terrifying and scary and unapproachable, and you're making it something that they can easily walk into and at least have a framework of what it is. And Brian, the way that you talked about building connection within this community and how isolating that community can be because so few people are in it, and it's really difficult to find that connection. And now all of a sudden, one comment, sorry, I need to bring this up because this was such a beautiful comment that you said, that was the silence that exists after you talk about a diagnosis, right? And I think anybody who has ever, whether it's pediatric or anything, right? It could be adult population, it could be geriatric, it could be fully expected. But anytime that you reveal a diagnosis to somebody, there's that moment of silence that is so heavy. And so to fill that silence with something so positive and something so exciting and something like, I need to make this comment about this beautiful like patch and like this wonderful like concept. I just think it is such a cool way to approach that, and such a cool way to again fill that space with something so positive. Our minds cannot hold a positive thought and a negative thought at the exact same moment. So why are we flooding it with only negative thoughts during this diagnosis? And so allowing that space to fill with positive thoughts is such an important thing. And both of you guys are doing that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Both of you guys. I mean, that means a lot to me, I'm sure, and it means a lot to Aaron as well. It was kind of great. I got to meet Aaron. Aaron and I have talked, but I guess when we saw Aaron, I saw you at.
I think it was at Scope.
Yeah,
it was just so much warmth. It was like meeting a kindred spirit in life.
Yeah. He was walking around, and I was like. And I told him, I'm like, man, you're my like fun competition, like only good humor. But you know what, that's kind of what this is about too. It's about community, really. It's about people. It's about supporting each other. It's about, so getting to meet Aaron like in the flesh was really kind of cool because, I think a lot of what we're doing at the core of kind of what we're engaging and how we're choosing to engage and, knowing the significance and the importance of it from our own experience, mine through my son and Aaron personally, like we know that having a tremendous support system in place is essential. It's essential, and it actually allows, whether it's clinical trials or treatment, to actually work. Scientifically proven. So, it's like that mental well-being is so important. So it was really cool meeting Aaron. So I just wanted to put that out there.
So I had a question, and this is a comparator. So Aaron, you use the term the power of play. So it's the ability for children to understand what they are going through in a healthcare situation or a clinical research situation through the power of play. Whereas Brian, you also have almost like a power of play where you're bringing fun into very, very heavy situations. How are both of these addressing that as the power of play? And that's what I mean is, it seems like Aaron's Empath Lab teddy bears and Purbles, they bring that fun into the heavy situations, while at the same time, Brian, you give pediatric patients something to focus on when they're going through a challenge. So how do you compare the two to the power of play versus like the power of focusing on something fun?
Well, I think, we always say the power of patches, right? And now it's the power of plushies, the power of pins, the powers of any really fun deliverable. And listen, it's not even about a patch for us, really. It's about what that patch signifies, right? For a child to get something in the mail every month that's just for them, something that's special for them, something that other kids may want, but it's just their jacket, right? Something, I wanted to create, excuse my French, a badass club for kids with cancer. That's really what it is. And play, to be 100% honest with you, the whole process sucks. Going through treatment sucks. Going through, any of our experiences, that anyone who's suffered from a severe illness or been closely related to anyone who's gone through it, it really sucks. So, we have families reach out to us every single day, and they go through, we're going through our second bone marrow biopsy. We're back in, treatment. We're back, and we're like, and our response is like, awesome. We want to welcome you to the program. Like, and I think that's what it is. It's kind of like a step away of like, not the reality of is harsh on its own. Like if you could provide that bit of love and support, like that's what's going to help people navigate it. Because when you have a child in treatment, like you have three, and I talk about this in the clinical trial space, you have three patients. You have the child, you have the parents, and you have the siblings. And I think when you forget about the family structure and the family unit, that's where there's problems, right? So if you can build that up from the core, I mean, all the love that we received as family, like we didn't want that love and support at first. Like we felt very, very uncomfortable asking for anything. In hindsight, we needed it. Yeah. Right. We needed it. And for us, it's just by, I always said this is like the happiest accident that, like this all came from a place of, me saying like, man, I don't want to inconvenience anyone. It's COVID. People don't want to see anybody. Everyone's got a patch laying around in the drawer. Just put it in an envelope and mail it. It gets my son off the sofa to check the mail. Like that's really what stemmed from. I didn't know it turned into this. But I'm so grateful that it has. Right. And I think, the stumble upon that from so when you say play and the power of play, it's the power of also like stepping away from the reality of things, because that reality we cannot change, So it's kind of I think that's kind of how I view it in a way.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, and I think Brian and I have a really similar understanding, right, of like the care structure, the emotional journey of what it is like to go through this illness. And I think our solutions get at different sides of the problem. I think there are similarities in providing something that is delightful in these moments that's distracting. And then I think something that we lean into a little bit more is around actual medical play. Yes. So like I'm big on this philosophy, and to get esoteric for a moment, but like Piaget, who said that play is the work of childhood, right? It is how children perceive the world. And so we use the play of simulating medical procedures, which is what Child Life does in a cancer context, right? When they're coming and explaining things in the room. We give children the tools to exact some type of control over their experience. And what we know is that when children can play through, and when I say play, when they actually take the role of caregiver. So in this family structure, kids and their siblings can take the role of caregiver. They gain empathy for their doctors and they become their doctor, right? They're providing medical care to this item. And what it does is it sets expectations, whether it is in cancer treatments with our doc, which I can talk a little bit more about, or whether it's in a clinical trial. It shows the child what to expect. And what that does is it reduces anticipatory anxiety. Yeah. So children are less worried about the treatment. They know exactly what to expect when they're coming in. And then there are just some really beautiful things that cascade off of that. And I'm really excited to be able to share. We just published a randomized control trial. Now, this is not in clinical research, but it's on our DUC, our collaboration with AFLAC, for children with cancer. Great. And we were actually able to show that over 3 months of use, we had statistically significant reductions in the pain levels of children, in their nausea levels, at the child distress and the parent distress. So, right, like we know that by giving folks these tools to go through and practice, it puts them in this place of control. In clinical research, we actually don't want to have that large of an effect. And so we have a different product design so that we're not affecting clinical endpoints, but where we can still affect things like anxiety, because we know, and if you go show them exactly what's going to happen in a site visit, their anxiety comes down a little bit. They know what to expect. They know when they're going to get a poke. They can create in our passport a coping plan. So they get a hug from mom or dad, or they get to play video games right before they get their injection or their PK blood draw. They know exactly what is going to happen through that whole process.
Aaron, that is so commendable. And just like talking through the published article that you just talked about, right? I'd love to see that article, by the way, side rant. But I think it is so cool to reduce those anxiety levels, right? And I think like both of you guys are coming at it from this confidence standpoint and giving and empowering those individuals to gain confidence through their own medical care. And so often, you know, you get this diagnosis that you don't understand. Even as adults, we often don't understand our own medicine and understand our own healthcare. And so I think it's so important with the pediatric population to give them back that confidence and to give them this understanding and give them this ownership of their own medical experience. And right, to be able to have that confidence and walk in and say, I know exactly how this is going to work. I'm so good. And that anxiety level then, again, as you said, is going to come down so much. And we're going to be able to really help them in ways that are productive, not just by like putting a Band-Aid on it and traumatizing these kids for then life to doom them to dooming for a good conversation, dooming them to therapy and all these end things that are going to come later in life, you know, because of all of that.
Absolutely. And I just to jump in and say, like, I really, Brian, I don't know if you feel this way. Like, I don't live in the land of either or. I live in the land of and with. So like when I, you know, with Oliver Patch Project, I think this is and with, you know, like, yes. And both of these things are super additive. They both have a really unique role to play. And they both, I think both create amazing impact for children who are going through, you know, whether it's pediatric cancer, which we share a close connection to, or whether it's, you know, clinical research. Like these are, I know this is our head to head, you know, but, you know, maybe it's more hand in hand.
Oh, it should be hand in hand. They're two incredible individuals working.
Man, I love these quotes. These should all be so many t-shirts quotes coming out of these.
You know, and listen, I just want to touch on that one thing, Aaron, because you know what, I think what we're also doing, you know, I always say my number one goal or hopes is that 10 years from now, a child goes in their closet, sees this little teeny jacket hanging up, right? And they were like, yeah, I did that, right? And what they remember is not all the needles, not all the shots, not all the radiation, the chemotherapy, not all the lumbar punctures, not all the, you know, they remember that someone loved them, right?
Yeah.
And that there was a lot of love around them and that they were supported, right? And that people, and I think that what we're doing is we're creating memories on something that is very hard, but positive memories around things, right? Aaron, they'll look at the bear and they'll remember that bear has got them through. But that's there are many different ways. I mean, they're tokens of like something that's got them through it, right? And the longer they have them, the better it is, right?
I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, we see that in kids all the time. They have that stuffed animal that they've had. I mean, Mitch, you held up P-Bear, right? Like you've had that thing since you were young, and like you attach and associate so much emotion to that one thing. And whether it's a jacket or a bear, it does not matter. As long as that emotion is tied to that object, you're going to hold on to it. You're going to cherish it. It's going to be in some sort of special box somewhere, and you're going to be able to keep that forever, always. And just to kind of touch further on what you just said, you brought up a good point in your particular conversation, Brian, about retention versus support and utilizing different language through that. I'd love to kind of dive deeper on that, if that's okay with you guys.
I did want to mention one thing though, so Aaron said one trigger word for me that I think it goes through this entire story. He used the word control. And this is a lifelong lesson. This isn't just about pediatrics, but there's some major psychology around the word control. And the root to control is actually choice. If you have choice, then you have some level of feeling of control of your life. And therefore, you have things like reduced stress levels or reduced pain levels or things like that. This happens in workplaces. It's not just children. Oh yeah. Those who do not have a choice lose control and therefore have higher anxiety and stress and so many other different downstream things. So do you think that that term control combined with choice is a mutual alignment between what Aaron and Brian are doing?
I don't know who you're asking, but yeah, absolutely. I think choice is so key, whether it's where you put your patch, what object you put your patch on. Like, by the way, Lauren, these things in psychology are called comfort objects. 60% of the population has them, or attachment object is another term for them. But yeah, like, or whether it's the choice of how you practice, how you prepare, you know, we're even actually designing a new character where you choose your starting Pokemon, essentially. You have choice, right? So it's huge. It's absolutely huge in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And Brian, you're providing choice by allowing the kids to pick out their patch, right? And
Yeah.
design their own kind
A
of
jacket or a tote, right? You can choose a
Yeah, and
jacket or a
also
tote.
and then the patches themselves. I mean, why we made it? I mean, yes, is it easier to get jackets with patches made on them and just have them prefab? Like, yes, but that's not what this is. The fact is, when you're in treatment, you really don't have much choices. You kind of have to follow the protocol. If you follow this protocol based on the studies and the test, everything that's been done so far, the results are this, right? So as a parent, that was very hard. So that's why, we wanted kids to choose their own patches. They became identifiers for, whether it's child life, art therapists, or their doctors and conversation starters. And we also, why we did the milestones for the parents, we wanted the parents to be empowered to help their kids every time they go and they're rushing out because their child has a super high fever. They grabbed the neutropenia patch and said, "You got your high fever. Congratulations." And the kids actually, I had a parent, and this story, like 2 months ago, I had a parent reach out to me and they said that, that Jimmy was going into his first chemo treatment on Friday. And he can't wait because he's going to get his gorilla patch.
Oh.
And you know what? It's something, but it's as simple as that may sound but that's really what this is, right? It's the association with, having these tokens that kind of represent something else, and they're moments of, that you are become empowered, right? And whether you like it or not, you have to go through these milestones. It's just by default. So we want to celebrate those milestones rather than being like, oh, these suck.
And I think maybe also because they are predetermined milestones, because you've already established this, it's a way of telling the people who are going through this that they are not alone and that others have gone through it before them.
Yeah.
100%.
And so it kind of helps them to become part of that community. I think community was a major part of what you were talking about, Brian.
Yeah. I'll jump in on that too, is the community aspect too. And that family that you build. I know, Brian, you mentioned that too, that, Oliver was like sad. He's going to miss his family. Should be celebrating your final treatment. Most time you're ringing the bell and it's a big party. Everyone's excited. But yeah, you're kind of losing that connection with those people. But so to that point, all of the teams I've ever met in the oncology wings, especially in the peds, they are phenomenally empowering. They're supportive of the caregivers, the siblings, everyone. But it's those times when you go home that silence hits, and you have to wait till your next appointment, and then you get that energy back. But what you guys have been able to provide, whether it's the comfort of that constant, that bear or that animal you have, or the patches you get to look forward to between your visits, through the mail, and having that token you can cling on to in the interim, it is phenomenal, because that's a gap that is not filled otherwise. Doesn't matter how good the other care teams are.
Yeah.
Thank
it's
you.
lots of high highs and lots of low lows when you're in this whole process, and whether your process is, further along or it's at the very beginning, it's a total roller coaster. And so to provide some normalcy throughout it, that's huge.
Thank you.
Aaron, I wanted to pass it to you next, because I want to, actually, Lauren, would you be willing to open up this discussion? You had just started it and I rudely interrupted you. Could we talk about that nasty R word that we were talking about?
So our industry loves the term recruitment and retention, and we love to talk about retention. We have to hit these retention numbers. And that was something that I saw in both of the conversations and brought up in both of the conversations of like how we can actively look at that word a little bit differently, especially for the pediatric population, right? We're not just treating the people in the bed for any clinical trial, but we need to figure out how to treat everybody and how to help everybody, and not treat, sorry, I need to use a better word than that, but how we're looking to serve everybody and help everybody and involve everybody. That's not just in the bed. When my grandpa was going through clinical trial at end of life, like we were all involved in that process and we were all included in that conversation. And that's incredible, right? To be able to be a part of that and to understand it and to be a better support system because of it. So I would love to talk just a little bit about retention versus support and what that looks like holistically for the entire family, especially in pediatrics.
Yeah, well, so I think just for me, and I'm curious to hear what you think, Brian, but the first thing that I will be the first person to say from a retention standpoint is I don't think it comes from primarily products like ours. Like the number one reason people drop out of trials is travel. It's because it's too far to travel to the site. People have full-time jobs. They have to drive their child sometimes 2 or 3 hours each way to the site. And so we, at a very base level, like we need to be thinking about the burden on families of participating in a clinical trial. And we need to be looking at them like the same way we would look at ourselves and say, if I'm not being paid for this and I have to drive my child 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I have a job, how can I possibly participate in this trial?
Mm-hmm.
So I think what we have are things that help with things like travel. Because if your child isn't crying on the way to the clinical trial site, we hear from a lot of parents, like, as soon as you cross the bridge that's going right to the hospital, my child starts crying because they know they're going to get their blood drawn. Those are things that we can help with, right? We can help alleviate the anxiety. We can help comfort children. We can help parents be less stressed because they're not seeing their child cry. And those also play big roles when it comes to retention. Delighting children all the way through plays a massive role when it comes to retention. Yeah. But the primary, if we're going to think about it like a trial, the primary endpoint when it comes to retention, I think, is covering the functional basics of what is required for those people.
For sure.
And that is so often just not done. And there's amazing organizations like NORD that provide travel grants, that provide support on trials. Our tool, I'll speak for myself, Brian. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think our tools help with retention, but they are not a holistic packaged solution for retention. Because if they were, they would come with travel credits. They would come with meal vouchers. They would come with all of these other things.
It'd be a totally different vendor right there.
Yeah. So sorry, that's my soapbox. And it's a little bit of like the anti-sell, but I'm very realistic when I talk to sponsors and like, yes, we will make an impact on retention. We will help. But if that's what you're looking for, there are better allocations of your dollars than on a solution like this.
Yeah.
And that goes back into healthcare integration. That's another podcast, but
it's a whole nother story, but I think it's valuable if we're talking about this.
And what we do. I mean, I really appreciate your view on this. I mean, I think I have a little bit of a different view on it. Because I think being in the space that I'm in with, the pediatric oncology beginning, there's amazing organizations that raise money for research, right? So there was that kind of initial for me, like, okay, well, what am I doing? Like these organizations need, like, this is the most important, Aaron, right? This is the most important thing is money for research, right? And I think I had to come to terms with that, in many ways, because, we're providing like a feel-good support program, right? And how do you go? And I think they're totally two different avenues, and they each serve its own. Because I know the daily, day in, day out of going through something and getting through that is, I think, the most burdensome component of any, whether it's a trial or treatment in general. So for me, and for us, I do believe that our program will definitely help facilitate, I always say, like, you guys say retention, we say support. Like, we're a support program. We're not, when I think about retention, I think about like, okay, so here's my water jug and I'm afraid it's going to run away from me and I want to hold on to it. Right. And I think when you go at it that way, like, the fact is, if you provide that support from the get-go, especially with clinical trials for pediatric, I mean, let's be honest. I know clinical trials are not like a last resort type situation, but but with a lot of kids, they don't, it is. I mean, it is at this point because they don't really want, a lot of times it's a last resort. At least the mentality of it is right now.
Yeah.
So I think that if you could provide that love and support from the get-go and know that they belong part of a community, like a global community, and that to me is what I really want, and when I've talked to, and I've met with, I don't even know who I'm allowed, like, I've met with Moderna, I've met with Pfizer, I've talked to all these people, and I said, listen, this program is not for your one study. This program is for everybody. And I know I'm asking you all to get in the sandbox and play. And they were like, all right. So I'm like shocked.
Yeah, I swear every time I look, Brian, on LinkedIn, you have another cool partner. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's partnering with them now.
Yeah.
And you know what? And so for me, I think that fundamentally, yes, having the money to do that, having the money to offset their cost living expenses, having the money, and I feel like there's so many awesome, amazing organizations that do that. I also realize you know what you do, and you do the best at what you do, right? And the fact is that we can't do everything, right? So I feel like we fit one little piece of sand on their beach, right? And I think I would never want to take money away from research ever, but I also feel like what we're both doing is essential in the whole journey that a family goes through,
Yeah. And just to like piggyback off of that, I feel like the support, like there's fundamental needs, right? We all need to eat. We all need a place to sleep. We all need somewhere to drive, right? The fundamental needs is one way to support people, but also like the unspoken needs is what you guys are really serving.
Yeah.
And like the feeling of connection, the feeling of empowerment, the feeling of confidence that we talked about earlier, the feeling of just having this sense of power in a powerless scenario is so cool. And it's something that will keep them involved. It'll keep them engaged. It'll help the parents, put on that braver face. I think so often when kids get enrolled in trials or kids get a diagnosis that is not good, we recognize that and we're working to help. They want to be the brave person for their parents. We see that so frequently. And so I think allowing those kids to show up and allowing those parents to also connect to those kids in such intimate ways through these different playthings and different ways to do it is just so it's wonderful. So I don't know that it's a essential need. It's a unspoken need though, in my opinion.
So
And
it almost feels,
don't get me wrong. Like, I think that these are essential needs. I think that emotional well-being and mental health are essential needs.
Sure.
I just, when it comes to like the hardcore of retention, it's the travel, it's actually experiencing adverse events. Like, so much is because people experience adverse events and drop out of trials. I think it's like again, one of these like yes ands. And when you have the emotional support,
100%.
those adverse events might be easier to write out. We don't have that data. That's not published because, we're not looking at these things. Like, yes, travel is huge. When you have emotional support, when you have a better patient experience, I personally believe that those things become less of a burden or less of a perceived burden if ultimately, just like Brian said, this family that got a patch, their child said that they were excited for their first chemo treatment so they could get their patch, right? It's reframing the narrative around those things. And so I think it powers, right? So it's absolutely like, I think that they feel a really essential need that if we looked at trials that had amazing patient experience and amazing emotional support, I would be really interested to see why people are dropping out of them.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that maybe a really good word here is holistic. So holistic
100%.
Holistic support leads to successful trial completion, not retainment. You're completing a trial. And I love Aaron's comment on travel because now you're starting to create a social determinant of health as an exclusionary factor, which is not something that we need to be having in this industry. In fact, that's what we need to be fighting.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. I look at retention a lot of the same way I do, community engagement. It's those those aspects of just being there to provide support and services for patients and not expecting a bunch in return, but just constantly providing that unconditional support and being there for the people.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
I agree. Well, so I had one more comment, and then, actually, I'm really surprised. We're 40 minutes in, no comments on LinkedIn. Kelvin, if you're there, we'd love to have engagement with the audience. Someone out there would love to hear you. This is a live event for a reason. Aaron, one of the big aspects that you talked about during your interview was that philanthropic, even the children going through something saying, even if I don't make it, I hope my parents are okay. Like, they never want to be a burden to whoever they might be working with. Do you ever run into that, or even Brian or both of you, do you ever run into that when you approach them with Clinical Companion or Aflac Duck or Purple or Oliver's tote or jacket? Do you ever get that whole, well, I don't want to burden anyone, maybe someone else might deserve this more than I do, that kind of a mentality? Do you ever run into that?
I can't say that we have directly. I think that kids certainly have that mentality, at least we observed, of being incredibly mindful of how their parents are feeling, but receiving a tool, receiving a toy that has a shared experience with them, I have not observed that. Yeah.
Right?
I think that, I guess if I had to equate it, with feeling, I don't know. I think when you goes back to like, you're saying a holistic, when you focus on the family, when you focus on like when a child is feeling happy because they're receiving something, right? The family feels happy.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so I think when you approach it that way, like the burden, I think, yes, I mean, you always have people that, deserving. I mean, I'll tell you, like from a personal standpoint, I mean, and this was kind of for us really brought to attention personally when Make-A-Wish came up, right? And came to us about doing a Make-A-Wish. Okay. We're like, first of all, we thought it was terminal and it's not, it's life-threatening, illnesses. But then we're also like, hey man, we can afford, like I go on vacation, right? My in-laws have a place in the Keys. Like I get to do things, right? There's families that have nothing. And I was like, listen, I don't want to take away from those families.
Yeah.
And they said, no. I said, cancer affects. They told me like these life-threatening diseases affects everybody. It doesn't know race, doesn't know, doesn't know so like financial situations, doesn't know where you're from, your culture, anything, and I always focus on that because and that's why I think at the forefront we always like tell people like this is 100% free, fun, and awesome. Like that's it. Like it's here whether you want to be involved or not. So that's up to you, And I think when you take that pressure off and put that at the forefront, you realize that like I think a lot of that burden, and I think it's self-inflicted burden. Like for me, like I didn't want to ask anyone for anything.
Yeah.
And, like I realized people that was their journey. Like a patch for when we received 2,000 patches in the mail for a month's time, that patches represent the words that people didn't have, it.
Yeah.
And if I didn't allow, like I had to be willing to receive that because that was part of my journey. And it changed everything for me. So as far as the burden component of it, I don't know if we just kind of like, don't look at it or like, don't acknowledge it because it's like, yo, no pressure, but we're here if you want, like, and we'd love to have you.
Mhm.
And when you have that approach with not only the child, but the family, because when we try, I think we both try to incorporate family. I think it's a really important thing to what we do because you don't have one or the other. I think when you focus on that, I think the burden is in many ways, or the guilt or the stress or it's kind of relieved in a way because they both are getting equal satisfaction, for lack of better words, but also kind of like something from it, right? In maybe different areas, but in the end, it's better for the patient.
That's a very good point. So equality. So
Equality,
that's the cool thing
Yeah.
is equality. It doesn't matter what your home status is or socioeconomic status. This is one thing that everyone can have in common when they go through a challenge.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good point, Brian.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's something that's exciting for the parents too that you mentioned is really that aspect of like just seeing your kid smile, right?
Yeah.
Anything that's putting a smile on your kid's face, it just fills
Putting a
your
smile
heart.
on your face.
It's beautiful. So people connect to stories, and you guys were both very vulnerable during your podcast and shared your own stories. I'm curious if you have like a favorite moment or something that, a favorite patient story or patient interaction or some way that, your product or your service was incorporated into a family's life that you would like to share with the audience this afternoon that just, right, is kind of one of those moments that you sit back and say, this is why I do what I do.
Aaron, because I got one.
Yeah. I guess I have a lot.
So
Because
you
I've
already
been
told
really-
the autism duck one.
I already told that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell another one.
Yeah. I guess I think of like this little boy down in Houston, Texas, who got our duck, and he was going through chemo treatments, and I believe he got a virus, and he's had a lot of trouble sleeping. And so we have a little spaceship card that you can tap to the duck's chest, and it plays these calming soundscapes. And So he started playing it the first night and the second night, and we ended up meeting him and his mom, and they said every night for the past year he falls asleep listening to those soundscapes because that's what got him through that experience.
Wow.
And that just really touched me. Not just that it could help him get through, but that it kind of just became this part of his routine, and that's just like some kids want a nightlight, like he wanted his duck, he wanted to play the garden soundscape, and that's what he fell asleep to.
I hope that you collect these testimonials and share them with your team, Aaron, because that drives people to want to do really wonderful things.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's
right?
awesome.
You give comfort to him in that time and also beyond that time. And
for an entire year. I'm starting to think I need some soundscapes now.
Well, then I know that we're not supposed to share too, but something actually happened this week, which was really cool because I've been giving away some clinical companions at conferences, and somebody who got one reached out to me actually the end of last week and totally made my week. Her son has asthma and hates taking his inhaler. And so she told me they've been bringing the bear to doctor's visits, but every day it's like a battle to do the inhaler. And then she sent me these photos where she's like, we gave the inhaler to the bear first. It's the first time he took his inhaler.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I was so stoked. I was like, oh, nice.
Huge. That is huge, right?
That is huge.
So, anyway, sorry, I talk about that. Clearly, this is this. I'm sure, Brian, you have like a million bajillion stories as well.
I have one, and it's I don't know if it's my favorite. It's the most touching one for me. There was a kid that we had, Charlie, who was in our program, and he had received this jacket and was receiving his patches. And I'm gonna go. This one trails into another one too, the parents sent us. We didn't hear from some of the parents. We hear some of the parents after the trip. They want to run as far as cancer as they can, right? And we understand that too. So and some stay on to be ambassadors, right, for your program. But this parent reached out and she said, we're taking Charlie home on hospice, and I wanted to tell you how much your jacket meant to him and the patches every month meant to him. And that, to me, I think Aaron would agree with me. We don't do this for us. And I don't need anything from anybody. But to hear that and know the impact that it had, affected me so deeply. And, and again, I have many, and I'm going to tell you one thing. This was a learning lesson for me. That was an eye opener. Okay. So you have people that sign up for jackets, right? And sometimes you have you always think in your head, like, oh, these people trying to, when you get all that negative stuff, and Lauren, you're talking about like a negative or a positive, right? But when you start to think that like, oh, are they trying to take advantage? Are they trying to get something free? But then, I asked, somebody who has been in this space for a while, like, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you understand it? How do you not be jaded that you think everyone is trying to take it? And she's like, well, we just say that's how someone's coping, right? And I was like, that's a really interesting approach on it. So we had this one family reach out. The daughter was 12 years old, and she got a double XL jacket, which is a really big jacket. It's a big jacket for me, and I'm big. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And so I reached out and I was like, is this, in my head, I was thinking like, is this for her? Is it for her parent? Is it for and then I was like, so I reached out and I said, hey, it's a really big jacket. You sure you want this? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, let it go, man, let it go.
Yeah.
And we made the jacket, and 3 weeks later we got a photo back, and this girl had a tumor in her side, the size of a basketball. And that to me changed me, because it showed me that you just gotta love, man.
Yeah.
You gotta love with no expectation, and for me, so hearing these stories from these parents, I don't need to hear them. It touches you so deeply when you do, Aaron, and I'm sure that you can, that as well. And I mean, and there's many, 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 many stories, but it's that I think of the emotional moments are really what affect me deeply more than anything,
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I mean, how do you follow that? But
so I do have a follow-up story for that. So every August 21st, we celebrate my daughter Violet's birth and death on the same day. We created a program called Violet Acts of Kindness, as compared to Violent Acts of Kindness. It's Violet Acts of Kindness.
Awesome.
So we literally go around the city and we randomly throw envelopes with money in them, no matter where it is. And we do it intentionally because we don't want to know who gets that money.
Yeah.
Because we have to learn that we want to give without judgment.
Yes.
Whoever was meant to receive that money was
Amen.
meant to receive that money.
Yeah.
And I don't want to know about it. So like I was at a gas station. I filled up the gas pump and then I put a little envelope of money in the handle of the gas pump and drove off. That was it. I just let go. So I think you're absolutely right, Brian. When you get to the point where you give without condition, it's unconditional giving, right, Mitch? You have to get to that point, especially when you're in this system where, you know, people are coping. They might be needing this for something. There's a reason why people are seeking something like this. And I think that you're spot on.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
you had mentioned Charlie, Brian. And so my question to you is, was Charlie buried and did they put that jacket in his casket?
I don't know that answer because you know, we also respect unfortunately like sometimes they don't reach out. We have had cases, especially when we're dealing with DIPG and other terminal illnesses. We have had, you know, jackets take about, you know, 2 to 3 weeks to make. Sometimes we can't get the jackets to the kids before they pass, but we have a parent did reach out to us and say that, but their best friend is wearing it every day. So, I mean, we hear stuff like that, but as far as like that's concerned, God, to navigate those, like we prefer to give people really their space. If they reach out to us, then we do it because you don't know, like that's a roller coaster ride, man. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I have imagined and I don't want to imagine, but so I don't know if they I'm not really sure. You know,
I would guess that given the emotional support that those jackets or that bear has provided during children when they're having huge challenges right now, in the event that a child does pass, I would imagine that's a very good life memento. And they're either going to be passed on as a memory to generations, or they will be the final resting place for that child.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's amazing to hear. I mean, at least for the opportunities you guys have to hear, like the parent feedback and the responses from the family and the impact that happens there. But, you know, so personally, I haven't been able to experience too much of that, you know, that parent feedback and that interaction. But, you know, I've dealt plenty with, you know, the pediatric and oncology patients directly, and all the way back. I think my first experience sticks with me the most and kind of propelled me to then, you know, start volunteering more and picking up opportunities with Make-A-Wish when I was just a wee baby paramedic, and going to baseball games and all that fun stuff, and kind of helped drive my research career to getting into like expanded access to provide, you know, research opportunities for those that didn't have them. Well, I'll never forget the little boy. Like we got a call to pick up this kid from a home to transfer him to the hospital, and that was just generally it. And I was young and single and no kids, so it made sense to send me and my other young single male partner to this house. And there was a big party going on, and I was really, really confused. And I just confirmed the address, and everyone's celebrating because it looked like a birthday party. Ultimately, it was like an end of life celebration, and everybody was there at the home in the yard, and kind of seeing this kid off and loading him to the ambulance. It was the most wild experience. We're taking him over to the children's hospital, and it's me, dad, and you know, the little boy in the back of the ambulance, and the dad just starts losing it. And I'm trying to hold it together because I have to be like the strong one in this time. And I'm tearing up, and really threw my partner when he opened the doors when he got there. But the little boy in the gurney reached over, put his hand on his dad's leg, and says, "Dad's gonna be okay. I'm not gonna be in pain when I'm in heaven anymore." And I lost it. And it's just absolutely insane, the strength that these pediatric patients have, and I have never yet in my life met anyone stronger than these kids. It is wild. That they have.
Yep. I felt this. I've witnessed it personally. Sometimes I feel like the families are the ones that are hurting more than the children. The children are just there. They're like, "We got this. This is fine."
That's 100%
Absolutely
accurate. 100%.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I guess with final few moments, like everybody hears these stories and connects to these stories clearly, like emotionally, physically, however you connect to these stories. And, you know, even if you don't have kids and even if you don't know the love in a parent's mind and stuff like that, you can still connect to these stories. I guess my question to both of you is, how can people get involved? How can people get engaged? How can people contribute? How can the support go beyond just this 1 hour conversation for both of your organizations?
For me, first and foremost, our number one goal is to kind of reach as many kids as we possibly can. So if you know someone who's going through something, like send them our way. Like, we want to make them a jack and a tote. We want to send their sibling patches. We want to, like, that's the core of what we do. I mean, you know, yes, there's always that, you know, oh, people can go and donate and all that stuff. But, you know, I think the way that, you know, I've always believed is you put your mission forward, right? And then all that stuff just kind of falls in line. You know, you just have to make sure you're out there and talking to people. So that to us is the number one thing that people can do. Can spread the word, because, you know, you may know someone who knows someone who knows someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that's kind of there, you know, again, from, if you had to do a financial, it's like any corporation, businesses, foundations, people that want to get involved, people that want to volunteer, want to help out, you know, and there's many, 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 many ways that can be. They can be an ambassador just talking about it. They can stuff envelopes. They can do corporate. They can write notes out to kids, and I'll send them with the patches. Like, so there's many different ways of engagement. It's just kind of like, I always feel like it's about exposure, right? It's about education, and it's also about obviously funding to keep going, right? So I believe in, say what you want about prayer or the universe or God or whatever it may be. I believe in that you go out with pure intent, that it all works out. Like, and that's a scary thing. You just have to render up that fear, you know, you have to render up that fear. And so I just think by people listening to what, you know, listening to me ramble is like good. we're on that path, you know. So sorry, Aaron, I don't want to.
No, I have the same philosophy. You know, you got to jump and the ground comes to meet your feet when it comes to doing these types of things. Yeah. You know, for us, like if you know a child with cancer, our duck is, or your sickle cell disease or a blood disorder, our duck is fully free. You know, you can go to aflac childhoodcancer.org. You could request a duck, or if you're at your hospital, you could ask your child life. So that's one way that we could help. That's, you know, just what we're able to do, and with the support of AFLAC. But, you know, I think, like, more broadly, I would encourage people, if they're really passionate about this, see if you can volunteer with your local child life department. They always need volunteers. It can be a really challenging, you know, these people are the heroes of the hospital. I think they're often the unsung heroes. There's always opportunities to get involved. If you have a child, maybe they want to consider a career in this. You know, there's always room for more child life professionals. For those of you who don't know, these are the people who spend really, I would say, the most quality time with children in the hospital. They are play therapists. They come in before your bone marrow transplant, before your port access, before you get chemo. They're the ones who are playing your favorite YouTube video or turning off the lights or allowing you to have choice in the process. These are the people that give children choice. So if you love what Brian or I do, obviously donate to Brian's organization. He's a 501c3. Like, do that today. Do it right now. Go on his website. Give this man some money, right?
I'll pay you later.
Yeah, no worries. Like, do that, number one. That's number one thing to do. Second, you know, you have kids who have these illnesses, send them to our organizations. But third, if you're just passionate about this, you know, child life is an amazing way to get involved. And often these are also philanthropically funded roles at hospitals. They are not reimbursed or billable by insurance. Yeah. So if you care about this and you've already made a donation to Oliver Patch Project, then look at your local pediatric hospital and look at how you can support them financially in having these child life programs, which serve not only cancer, but any child who's in the hospital.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
We'll wrap. So Lauren, you wrap up, but actually I've got an answer for you. And this is something that is really weighing on me. But there are so many sites that join Clinical Research Payment Network. And when they do, they fill out a site profile questionnaire. What trials are you interested in performing? A fraction, I mean 10% of over 100 trial sites, choose pediatrics, because pediatrics are too hard, because pediatrics have extra hoops, because there's extra special experience assenting that you have to do for pediatrics. It's just too hard to do. So as a result, we as an industry are literally creating larger research deserts right now for our children than for our adults.
Yep.
So my recommendation, if you really want to get involved, is to start spreading the word that research is a thing.
Yeah.
My ask for the sites is that you buck it up and be the professionals that your communities need to serve our children. I know it's an extra hoop, but it's well worth generations of lives. And as a community, we have to raise awareness for research. We can support research in communities where there is no hope for these children.
Yeah.
And so that's my one ask. Please consider that as professionals. Lauren, I would like to ask you to wrap up this episode, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So we talked briefly about how the impact of both your guys' programs gives such a positive mindset. And I'd love to do a little bit of a positivity loop here and kind of close it out. I said how we can't hold a positive thought and a negative thought at the same time. One, gratitude, something that you're grateful for today, something that you feel so blessed for, something, whatever that looks like for you. Just what are you grateful for today? Let's open the floor. Anybody want to start?
I'll start. I get hit with these gratitudes a lot, so I'm good at thinking on my feet.
Okay.
I'm extremely grateful to I mean, I've never met Brian or Aaron in person. We've never even actually spoken. I know there's been some LinkedIn back and forth, but I'm so grateful to be able to meet both of you, have a conversation with both of you. Aaron, I know after the podcast, though, I actually got my daughter a purple, and she gets stressed out sometimes, and it's so incredibly calming. Like I'm amazing at calming this little guy down too. You gotta, he freaks out and you flip him upside down and he'll cry, and he vibrates and comforts you to sleep. And it's absolutely amazing. And I'm so grateful for all the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Go ahead, Brian. Aaron?
To second, like I am grateful to, have an opportunity to be on this panel amongst great individuals. I also feel, and this might be weird, I feel blessed, and I don't mean that from our experience as a parent going through this, that I stumbled into this world that I could help share just a little bit of love with other kids, and my team can share this love, and that I get to meet this. Okay, so stepping into the clinical trial world, I mean, I'll be honest with you, like I thought it was going to be blue, white, and cold. It's the furthest thing from that. And I'm really grateful because I get to be an advocate for these people that are making a difference, when I think a lot of us have, as parents, have maybe negative thoughts to the industry in whole. So I feel really blessed to have the opportunity to to question everything that I thought.
Yeah.
You're a light in the industry for sure, though.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, I have a lot of gratitude similarly for, being able to join today. The effectiveness of the work that we do is really based on the ability of people to know about it. So I'm grateful for the opportunity for the audience to share a little bit more about the work that we do. And I'll just say, like, Brian, I'm really grateful for you to have have met a kindred spirit who has a heart in a very similar place. And I have a lot of love for you.
Thank you. I feel the same way.
Mm-hmm. Well, beyond, go ahead. Yeah,
I'll finish it up if that's okay, Lauren.
Okay.
I'll go ahead. You say what you need to say.
Perfect. Beyond what everybody said, I am very grateful for people in this space and people that are such hustlers in this space, right? You guys are going out there, you're hitting the ground, you're shoving this narrative, you're pushing this to the forefront. And that's really what we need in this space. And so I'm grateful for your guys' tenacity and willingness to speak up.
So I can almost guarantee that every single one of you have an Outlook calendar that looks like Skittles. You probably have more you have more or fewer openings than you have slots. And the fact that you came here today to talk to me, or the fact that all of the professionals out there who spent an hour and 5 minutes watching this is willing to contribute their time to pay attention to this mission is by far one of the best things I could ever be grateful for. The fact that it's important to you and me at the same time, and we're working together, is my ultimate gratitude.
Awesome.
So thank you so much, everyone, for coming and for tuning in for so long. CRPN Central, please like, comment, subscribe. I can't tell you how much it means to everyone in this industry and to this mission. And importantly, we'll see you all next time. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care.